You may notice that the way your materials look is slightly different than mine. You have a different output node, and that's because you don't have substrate materials enabled. You don't have to use this specifically, and regardless if you use it or not, the basic material functionality, how to create it, is the same. Substrate is an expanded material function for creating layered materials, which are very useful and very much unique to Unreal Engine. I have it enabled by default, which I would recommend learning if you are interested in material creation. Now, going back to the materials, we have some options here. We will ignore everything on the right side, which are mostly specific to substrate, and we will focus on mainly here: base color, metallic, specular, roughness, normal, emissive color, and opacity. Base color is, as it is, called base color. On the left side, we have a preview of our mesh. As you can see, currently there is nothing in it, so it is just white. Let's add a color to this. The way you can do it is you can right-click on the material graph. This is the material graph, as mentioned here. And you can try to find the texture node, or etc. But you can just simply hold 3 on your keyboard, numpad, and click. What this does, this creates a constant value that you can use to select a color. So this is RGB based. So let's select red. We can adjust the color here the way we want. If you have a hex code or sRGB code, you already know. You can just copy paste, type it in. And let's say red. As you can see, nothing's changed here because we have not plugged our node in yet. Let's plug our base color node here. And now our material is red. But let's say we want to make it more metallic. We need to add a value to metallic. Usually the values, not always, but usually goes between 0 and 1. Which means we need a 1 float value to put it in. This was 3 values which generated a color. But here we just need 1 value. So what we need to do, hold 1 and click, which will create a single value, which will be the float. Let's put our 0 value node into the metallic. Nothing changed much because the metallic value currently is at 0, which means it's as much as unmetallic as it can be. So, and as I mentioned earlier, 1 is usually the maximum value. So let's put a 1 here and click enter. Give it a moment. Now suddenly it is very different. We can always put a value in between. So 0.5. And 1. So let's keep it at 1 for now. We want it shiny. And we want it to be different. So by the way, you can check the default values here. So as you can see, specular default value is 0.5, which means this is a specular value of 0.5 at the moment. Let's add an additional float and put into specular. Now we have specular value of 0. Can do it 1. You may not notice much of a difference in the screen, but it is quite useful for non-metallic surfaces. As we made it metallic, we will not be able to see it. So let's make metallic 0 and specular 1. And now reduce specular to 0 to see the difference. You see? The material is very matte now. It's no longer shining. Because it is a non-metallic material with no specular. So it will not be shining and reflecting light back. But I prefer my material to be metallic for now, so let's make it 1. And specular does not matter when material is fully metallic, in most cases. So, now let's take a look at roughness. Roughness default value is also 0.5. So, we put roughness to 0, which means it is as smooth as a glass. And it is very reflective, because it is a fully metallic material with a completely smooth surface. If we reduce the metallic value, suddenly it is just a smooth object. If you have 1 for specular, there is some shine to it, but it is not as much as it was when it was fully metallic. So now let's put it to 1, 1, 0. And again, this is a very smooth metallic sphere. Specular does not matter when we have a metallic object, so we will just keep it at 0. And what happens if we put our roughness up? If you put roughness to 1, it is the same texture as a chalk. The closest thing that is to the value of 1 in real life is chalk. For those who don't know what chalk is, it is a tool used to write on the blackboard. But this is too much, so let's put into lower value. Let's say 0.7. We don't want it to be very reflective, but we want still it to be reflective. Maybe a bit more. We need to make it lower because it is in reverse. The less value we have, more reflective it is. No, a bit more. And yep, this is fine. Not too reflective, no. And now we have a normal. So in this case, because we are just making a simple color material, normal is not as well useful for us. But normals are used to calculate certain values in the tangent space. Usually, normal textures are used in conjunction with normal, and value of 0, 1 is rarely used by default. So let's look at an application of a normal. Let's say, oh yeah, this cobblestone we recently take a look at. So we have this normal node coming here. So we have a normal texture. This normal texture is important for the cobblestone texture to show up properly. So now let's look at the map. We have this material, correct? And in this material, if we go and take a look at the normal texture, this is a normal texture for the material we used on the floor. And let's say we remove it or change it to something else, right? So let's change it to normal of a different cobblestone or even pebble, and apply. Suddenly it looks a bit different. There is something wrong with the material. Let's do it again. This time let's outright change it into texture of a concrete. Apply. Now there is with these weird lines on the material, which are from the normal of cobblestone. It's very important for normals to match the texture. We need to apply it. I Ctrl Z twice to restore what we had initially. Normal textures are usually created by texture artists or modelers. If you want to learn how to do it yourself, I recommend to search for the modeling and texture related information or the courses in our course list. It is very in-depth and it can be as complicated as it can be, so we will not be covering it in this course. But if you are interested, please give your feedback. We may rush out a new course in this particular topic. So let's close this and go back to the material. Now it looks the same as before. Let's go back to our basic material we were creating. Here, we have something interesting. We have an emissive color. What does it mean? Emissive color is essentially a material that shines and produces light. So if we add a value and put it here, and at 0, it does nothing. If we put it like at maybe 5, now it is shining brightly. If you put it in, let's say, 5000, we may go blind. As you can see, it is emitting a lot of light at the moment. And this material is not meant to be shiny, so we will just not do this. And keep it at 0 emissive, which is by default, so we remove this. And we also have opacity. If we add a float node, my apologies. We add another float value and put it into opacity and put it at 0, the material color will just not show up because it's at 0. If you put it at, let's say, 0.7, we have a bit of an opaque. It's kind of hard to see, so let's do it 0.2. It is less opaque. In this case, we are not going to use this, but regardless, it is important to understand how materials work in general. If you want to make an opaque material or translucent, let's look at the material of the glass. So the glass we had is the starter content, materials, the glass material. Let's take a look at the glass material. We have reflection index, refraction, my apologies. We have our substrate shading model. And here we have opacity. And the opacity is set to 0.35. We also have additional refraction, etc., which make additional modifications to edit the surface of the object. This is way above intermediate level, so we will skip that one. If you take a look at here, we have a very interesting material, which is pretty much almost all black. We have a specular value of 10. As I said, usually it goes between 0 and 1, but sometimes you can go higher. In the case of specular, it is a value of 10. We have a roughness of 0, because this is glass. And we have opacity of 0.35. Because it is a black material with at opacity, it looks like a glass. And if you remove this refraction here, as you can see, it changed almost nothing. So don't bother yourself with refraction too much at the moment. And if we change this opacity to 1, this is no longer a transparent glass. If we change the specular to 1, it is way too dim. There is no guaranteed way to get the specific result you want. So with a material, so best course of action is to just understand the basic functions of the material, what they mean, and try to tinker around until you get what you want. Now, for now, let's close this. We will not save. Yep. And let's go back to this. So here we are back, and we have now this material, right? And we want this material to be applied in the level. There is additional options here for masked, additive, etc., which we will be covering in the future courses. And we will save this and go back to the level. Now, let's say we want these boxes to be the same color as our newly created material. We go here, select it, and we apply it. Oh, now suddenly we have 2 boxes with a material we just created. It is quite that simple to apply the created material to the level. But let's say we want to have a metallic material, but we want to have them each a different color or different amount of roughness or specularity. We want some, maybe this one to be yellow, this one to be green, this one to be white. It doesn't matter. Does that mean we create a new material for single one, every single type and variation? No. This is where material instances come in. So if you have a material and you want to have a multiple versions of that material, for example, just as I said, this, I want everything to be here to be exactly the same, other than color. So I want the same amount of reflective surface, metallic, etc. And only thing I want to be different is the color itself. What I can do is I can right click on the material and create a material instance. Now, what does this mean? Material instance is a child of a material, and it takes all its parameters from the material itself. So now let's apply this to all these meshes. So now we have a material instance. There are multiple benefits to having a material instance. It is more optimized and it's easier to change on runtime. So now let's separate this for a second and take a look at this, right? Correct. So right now we don't have anything in our material because we did not add any properties that we are supposed to be adding and changing from the material. There are some default options Unreal has for you, but they are not what we want. So how do we add options here to change during the process? We go to material itself and we find the parameters we want, and in this case, this one, we want to change color. So we right click on it and convert to parameter. So we need to name it. This is color, so it's simple to name. And now we have a parameter called color, correct? And the default value for this material is red. This is all we have to do. to keep in mind, you can do it for any other parameters. You could do it for roughness, metallic, etc. We go back and we open the mask parameter again. Let's make it a bigger. Now we have a color. So if we click on this and change the color here, it instantly changes the color of all meshes applied with this exact material. You can change it easily. But you may be asking yourself, wait, but I don't want all of them to be the same color. Fair enough. Just create more instances of that same material. And this one can be material instance 2. And apply this one. And this one can be material instance 3. And let's say this one is applied to this one, and this one is yellow. And let's do once again, create material instance, name it. This one, let's make it, name it 4, open it, change it, green, and let's apply this to this. Now we have 4 materials of different color. So you may be asking, what is the benefit of doing this? Because we essentially created multiple material instances. Couldn't I just create multiple materials? No. So first of all, material instances are more optimized, meaning they take less resources than it would if you had multiple materials. Secondly, now we have 4 materials instances, to be correct, which is being applied to these boxes. And let's say we take this material instance and we want to change something. But there's additional benefit here if you want to change all of them. Let's say there was a difference in opinion later on, and we want to make sure none of these colors materials are metallic. So we want them to be rough, and we change it in the parent, save, give it a moment, go back, and now all of them are non-metallic. So now we have flexibility to edit materials in the parent, which will instantly change all values not being modified in instance. Or if you want to change a specific material only on a specific instance of the mesh, you can just edit that instance. As I said, we can do it not only with color, we can do it with anything. So let's say this is a metallic. So we can right click on it, convert to parameter, call this parameter metallic, save. Keep in mind, this is a parent material. And now if you open any of the instances we previously created, we have an option here for metallic, which we can change. So keep in mind, one second, let's make it more visible. Keep your eyes on this blue box, and let's change the metallic. Now we have only one of them non-metallic. Obviously, it's better to just have 0 instead of negative. So we can easily modify our materials and our material instances this way. And this is the recommended way of doing this. So now let's save this and take a look at it. It's simple. It's nothing too difficult. And it looks quite good for something we created in few minutes. Now, before we move on to the next lecture, let's do another task. With the knowledge you acquired, create materials and decorate your scene. Good luck and see you in the next lecture.